to look at how to create gradients on our screen. So what gradients are used for? When you look at a picture like this, we know that this is a three-dimensional ball as opposed to just being a circle. The reason we know that, the highlights, the shadows, kind of these different tones that we get within where colors are fading from one color to the next. It doesn't go immediately from white to black. There is a section here where it kind of fades color from one to the other. So we're going to use that to our advantage to make three-dimensional objects in Illustrator. So eventually we'll end up making things like this. This will be your little first practice drawing that you might do, something along these lines. So here we have our colors fading from darker to slightly lighter. The clouds are kind of faded. Now if we were doing mountains and they were far away, the further away things are, the more muted and subdued the color is because it's further away. It's called atmospheric perspective. But anyway, kind of more than we need to know. What we need to know right now is the colors fading a little bit lighter here. Dark, light, kind of fading back to dark here. This one, it's more like a round fade. It's darker here and kind of fades to more of a yellow out this way. So those are the kind of things we'll do in Illustrator. So to do this, let's just make a new document and just kind of show you some of the basic features here. So this is just kind of scrap paper for me, not concerned about what size it is. I'm going to make a shape, and then on this shape we know that we can apply any color that we want by changing the fill color. We can also make this thing a gradient. Now to make something a gradient, you'll need your gradient window. If you don't have it, go to Window, Gradient, and you can get whatever you're looking for. Alright, so first thing I'm going to do is I need to decide what type of gradient that I'm going to have. That's what will kind of make this into a gradient. So we go to Type, and I'm going to do Linear to start. The reason it's called linear, the gradient fades from one color to the other in a line. To show you what that line is, there's a tool over here called the gradient tool. The keyboard shortcut is G. When you click on that, you can see the line that the gradient's fading in. Now I could draw a new line with this tool and it'll fade in that direction. If I make a short line, it has to fade very quickly. If I make a longer line, it fades much slower. And again, depending on the direction I drag, that is how this object fades. So if I want to draw a line and I want it straight, I can hold Shift while I'm drawing it. That'll constrain it so it has to go straight up and down, has to go sideways, or has to go to 45-degree angle. So that's nice to be able to hold Shift when you're drawing these lines. As far as the gradient window itself, there is currently two boxes on here. These are points where I can change the color. Now I can also, as you see, I can move these points around. So if I wanted to stay white for a while, this object, then begin fading, I can do that using this menu here. So what's happening is it's staying white until it gets to the first box. Then between these two boxes, it's fading from white to black. If I slide this over, same deal. It's staying white, it fades from white to black, and now it's staying black. If I wanted to add more spots to put color, anywhere I click down here, we'll add one of these boxes. So now it's going from solid white, it's fading from white to this shade of gray, from this shade of gray to this black, and then it's staying solid black from here until the end. And I can add as many of these as I want. If I want to get rid of some, just simply grab and drag them down. These little diamonds at the top, that is like your halfway point. What I mean by that, if I make this as basic as we can, we're going from white to black. This diamond is halfway between white and black. So it's like, think of it like 50% gray. Now if I move that 50% gray over to here, it's got to go white to 50% gray fairly quickly, kind of like we see here. And now it goes from 50% gray here all the way to here. It has to fade to black. So that part of the fade is going to happen much slower. So basically these diamonds, as you play with them, you'll kind of see what they do. They just affect how the color fades. So next, let's make another shape here. If I wanted this to have a radial gradient, any shape can get any either radial or linear. This is what a radial gradient does. It fades from the center outward. Now we can change where that fade happens. Again, going back to our gradient tool. As I hover my mouse over here, you'll see it looks a little different than that line we made before. I can still make brand new lines, but I have some other choices here. So what I can do is if I drag this out, if I go outside of this a little bit, I can rotate this, which doesn't do anything yet, but it will in a moment. If I want to move the whole thing, I go right to this point here. Not right here, but right here. I can move this whole thing around. By the way, I could do this with the linear type as well. And this little solid black circle, what this does is I can kind of crunch this thing into like an oval. So depending on what I'm looking for, I can do that. So those are the shapes. One last thing obviously we want to be able to do is change color. So let's look at that. Let's select this one here. And let's say I want to do 3 spots. And I showed you if I click here it adds a spot for me to add color. What I can do is if I double click on this first box, it pulls up this menu. Now this color is currently in black and white mode. I want to change that. I want to go to this little menu and select HSB. That is for hue, saturation, and brightness. If I turn up the saturation, it's going to be a lot easier to see what the hue does. So the hue is my color. Saturation is like how intense do I want that color to be. And then brightness is brightness. So pretty much using these 3 sliders, I can get any color that I want. So let's say I want this color. I want to use that exact same color again. As opposed to just adding boxes, I can also copy boxes that are here. So let's say I wanted to use that color again at the other end. I'm going to get rid of this box. I'm going to hold Option or Alt on a Windows keyboard and drag this over. Now I'm fading from this mustard color to gray back to that same mustard color. And again, to go here, double click, go to the little menu, HSB. I can select any color I want. Let's pick green there. Alright, so now I got 3 colors. One last thing I want to show you. At any of these points, I can drop the opacity for that specific point. Now before we do that, let's look at what opacity does. So instead of doing a specific point, let's take this entire object and lower the opacity. So I'm going to do that at this menu at the top. I'm going to drop the whole thing down. That makes it so a shape is kind of like see-through. If you're at 100%, you can't see through the shape at all. The higher numbers you have, the more you cannot see through it. So as I drop this number lower, I'm going to be able to see through this more and more. And then as I increase this, I see through it less and less. So that does the entire shape up here. If I just want to make it so part of this thing is see-through, I can select the little box where I would change the color, but instead of double clicking, I just clicked on it one time, and I'm going to drop the opacity in this one location. Now if I had that on top of something else, you can kind of get a feel for what's happening here. The center of this is see-through. The outsides are not. And as I change this more and more, you'll see more of that area where I can shine through. Now if I extend that this way using the little diamonds, it's going to stay clear for longer and then it starts fading to my mustard colors. And again, you can actually see the green coming through here as well because I still have this color set to green even though the opacity is at 0. So that's pretty much everything you would need to know about a gradient. If you needed to ever reverse colors in a gradient, that's the only other thing I'll show you real quick. If you have it selected and you click this, it just kind of flip-flops the different colors that you may have in there. So that's a nice little button to know about. And if you want a gradient to go a specific direction to, you can also type in an angle. So if I type in 90, that will be straight up and down. If I type in 0, that would be straight sideways. Alright, good luck.